Look at that snazzy
Hi.
lighting.
I know. I have my full setup finally done. Well, for my desk, I do.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, right? You like it?
Yeah, I do like it.
Yeah, you can
I
customize
feel like
everything.
I feel like I need something, something funky now in the background. It's just a white wall in my office that, was newly minted and just nothing, well, as you know, when you have something new and fresh and there's just a white wall, it takes a while to find. You want something, especially when it's new, you want something perfect to
Yeah,
put there,
yeah,
right?
for sure. I know.
I
I
don't
know.
like that word perfect, but yeah.
That
So,
something that feels aligned with the space.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
How are
Mm-hmm.
you,
It's been
my
so long.
juicy friend? Welcome to getting
I welcome to getting
juicy.
juicy. I'm Rachel.
And I'm Hero.
Wait, what? Call me by your name much?
Did you just did that wasn't on purpose?
Yeah,
It was on
that
purpose.
was on purpose.
Of course it was. Oh my God. Who do I take you for? You are a clever man.
Sometimes I'll
Sometimes,
take it. I'll take it.
yeah, take it.
I
Take
will.
it.
I will. I'll take it.
Take
I'm just
it.
gonna. Oh, it
Sure.
doesn't come in the frame. Oh, okay. Anyways, I'm doing well. Yeah.
Yeah.
I do want to give a quick shout out. I have to,
Oh.
obviously, to Nanoleaf, which is the
Oh,
brand for
okay.
the lighting here. They are a company based out of Toronto, Ontario, and they were also featured on our episode with Juicebox, which should be out by the time this episode will come out. And
That's true.
they are a multifunctional smart LED lighting system with RGB or red, green, blue color spectrum changing, and you can like put different color scenes on it. And so,
Is yours changing right now? Oh, it is.
yes,
Oh,
lightly,
crazy. Yeah.
lightly it is, yeah. But
Yeah.
there are ones that are like connected to rhythm and music that will go based on what it actually hears in real time. This is just like an automated one,
Yeah.
so it's
Yeah.
not rhythm or sound related. Yeah,
Yeah. Crazy.
yeah. It actually looks really good. I didn't know how it
Now
was gonna look.
I don't know if I'm gonna be distracted now by it. All I'm gonna be doing is looking at the light changing.
I know it's funny because I told them, it's going to be my podcast backgrounds
Yeah.
actually like starting in a couple of weeks, and they said, "Well, tag us when you start using it, and we'd love to see it." So
That's cool.
yeah,
Hey, Nanoleaf. Nanoleaf?
Nano Leaf, yeah.
Nanoleaf. Huh? Huh? I need something in my background. Huh? Huh?
Please sponsor us for
Yeah.
podcasting. We can like get super creative and super juicy with it. Maybe they can make it getting. Oh, I can make it getting juicy. Light
Oh,
color theme with the color print ink colors easily like that in a
oh,
second. I
that'd
could do
be
that.
cool. We need a juice box, maybe, or something like
Yeah,
that. Anyway, we're
An
getting
LED
so,
LED juice box right here.
yeah, something like that. Oh
I
my
know.
goodness. Oh my goodness.
How
Well,
are you though?
I'm okay. I was gonna say before, because we'll tend to get carried away, and
I
then the
know.
guest comes on, and we're like, oh wait, we didn't introduce our guest. Just before we start,
Uh,
I was gonna say schwitzing. That is not the right Jewish term, Yiddish term. Before we start schmoozing with each other, we do need to talk about who's coming on our show.
yeah.
So the Elaine Mensah, and now it's interesting. Every time I look at her name, I keep wanting to call her Elaine Mensch.
Oh, cute.
Which
Totally
is
say that to her when she comes on. I'm sure she'll
yeah,
appreciate
it's
it.
yeah. So now Elaine, okay, how did we get Elaine on the show? And we'll tell you who she is, but did you get Elaine on the show?
I
How
got
did this
Elaine on the
happen?
show.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, okay. What was the connection? You
Uh,
explain, because you're I feel like it's kind of your guest, perhaps. So
It
who is
is my
she?
guest.
Who
So
is she?
Elaine, okay, so Elaine is a multi dimensional entrepreneur, strong
Hmm.
businesswoman and person of color, based in Washington, D.C., and
Yep.
originally from Ghana, families from Ghana.
Cool.
And Elaine is a really big background in the fashion and wasn't also a bit in the PR industry as well. And is the current owner and founder of Showroom Etc. And we will learn more about that as well. And I'll let Elaine speak to that about
Hmm.
her interpretive of that. I'd rather her talk about what that is. But how I met Elaine actually, and also a really awesome, actually, it was the first podcast I was ever on in
Oh,
2008 when I was in
wow.
11th grade. Elaine and a co-host, James Cornwell, very sassy, flamboyant,
Oh, I know the
queer
story now. Yep.
hairstylist.
Uh-huh.
They had this little podcast when podcasting was, I think, in its first generation of Apple's culture of media,
Yeah.
called Fashion BS Radio.
Oh.
Yeah. And so I found out about this, I think, through Facebook. I was on Facebook and saw the group for it, and I was typing in fashion stuff, and it came up, and I was really um, was like, I need to be on that show. Like, I'm
Hmm.
going to get in touch with them and stuff. And they just had like 7 episodes up. I
Hmm.
guarantee that they're not established to the point where they wouldn't see fans writing in.
Right.
So the timing was probably everything, but then they probably saw my enthusiasm, my background in fashion so heavily at that time in high school, and being a connection from Vancouver. So they brought me
Huh.
onto, so they surprised me as I was getting ready for school in the morning. And I was really depressed at that point, like really depressed. And for like those half an hour that they called me, whatever, it was like a total light switch, a bipolar switch when they call it. I was so excited. I was so
Aw.
happy. We talked and gabbed all about Vancouver fashion and fashion week and designers, and it was
Wow.
incredible. And
That's so cool.
one of the most hilarious moments I will say for
Hmm.
when Elaine comes on and we introduce her, but there was something that James said when they were calling me because I obviously listened to the recording once it came out, and it was
Hmm.
hysterical. And I still remember to this day. So part of our inspiration for the dynamic that you and I have on this podcast definitely takes inspiration from how those two were on Fashion BS
Huh.
all those years ago. That's actually one of
Cool.
the dynamics that I wanted to create with our podcast. And it actually has a very similar aesthetic of like riffing and volleying and kind of
Hmm.
poking fun at each other, and in some ways like not belittling, but kind of like really taking jabs and knowing it's from love, and because we know one
Yes.
another so well that we know
Yeah.
that we can get away with it.
Yeah.
Same kind of banter. So it'll be fun to see how
Yeah.
Elaine through the years has developed. And one another thing Elaine did, about Elaine, she was also the operator and owner of Svelte LLC. And so it was a multifunctional platform, but also I was a West Coast correspondent or a blogger
Hmm.
representing Vancouver. And she had some other writers like from Miami and Washington, D.C., and I think someone in Seattle.
Hmm.
And so I did some blog posts for her through her page. And I think it was a
Wow.
Tumblr blog or a WordPress page. It was a WordPress page.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, it was really cool to
Huh.
work with her and to kind of get some experience. And then there was one other time, when I was corresponding for her, where they wanted me to cover the second Sex and the City movie where they go to Abu Dhabi. So I went to the
Oh
premiere
my.
in Vancouver, and they told me that she told me like go and interview some of the people and like make a blog review and get some quotes from people that saw the movie. And I remember it being so fun, but because of how young and how socially anxious I was, it was so intimidating, like to talk to random people in the movie theater that when they just, of course, in Vancouver, let alone Vancouver, don't want to be talked to, want to be left alone, like don't come near me.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
kind of, and my mom was like in the corner there, like cheering me on, like, go, you got this, you're going to be just fine. And anyway, so I was on the Fashion BS podcast the second time where they had myself and two other teens covering fashion. And so we talked
Oh, oh
about
my
fashion in the
gosh.
city and YouTubing and
Yeah.
stuff,
Yeah.
and then one
So,
last time for that. So
okay. So where is she from originally?
I think, well, I actually don't know where she
Oh
grew
no, she
up.
said Ghana. Yeah, Ghana,
I
but
know her roots are from Ghana. I don't
yeah.
know how long she's been in Washington,
But
D.C. or in the States for.
okay. So then what was the connection to Vancouver? Like what was so
The
like
connection to
what
Vancouver was the fact that
that
I
I guess that
wanted to
was
work with her. I wanted to work with
oh,
her
okay. I
and
thought
James.
they had
So
a connection to Vancouver
no, I was
somehow.
the
Okay.
connection. Yeah.
Okay. Never
Yeah.
mind.
So she'll
But
be joining us in a few minutes, but she's super fun, down the earth, really hilarious, and has such a
yeah.
story that I can't wait to hear about.
Well, and it's really cool what she's doing now, and she'll explain. But I was just reading about a showroom, etc., and you know, trying to get not just placements, but uh, get seen as with African brands
Yeah.
in a lot of in media. So like whether it be on shows, movies, television shows, those kinds of things, instead of highlighting other types or other countries or other designers, trying to highlight more African designers. And
Mhm.
that's, I think, what the whole Showroom Etc platform is based on.
Yeah.
So that's, yeah, really interesting. I'm not sure if she's had that for very long. I don't really know. Maybe
Mhm.
she has. Anyway, we'll talk more about that, but it's just very, very
Mhm.
fascinating, very niche
Yeah.
thing, which is really cool.
Yeah. Very
Um,
much so.
yeah. So Yeah, she'll be popping on any moment. And yeah, it has been a hot minute since Hero and I mean, it seems like, oh, they must talk all the time or they must see each other all the time, but
Mhm.
we actually haven't recorded an episode for like 3 weeks, I think now,
Yeah, 3 weeks.
almost 3 weeks. But when you get these episodes, be like, what are you talking about? Like there's been one out like almost every week because we've,
Yeah,
banked
we
them, so to
stockpiled.
speak.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, like these past couple weeks, I did get the vid. I'm just
Hmm.
making that one up. The COVID.
Yeah.
I got the
Yeah.
COVID. Mine's been like most people I talk to have said they've had lingering symptoms of something. And mine's definitely been, I think it's almost been 3 weeks. And I still have like this just tiny lingering congestion and the tiniest cough. And
Mhm.
my husband is actually, it's been just over 2 weeks for him, and he's back home from work in bed. So I don't
Oh,
know
wow.
what the hell is going on. Like, um, yeah, COVID sucks, guys. It's a real thing. I can't believe I spent this long not actually catching it.
Yeah, same here. I mean, how I got mine really recently, and I lucked out. I mean, I've got a high immune system, thankfully, and hopefully it stays that way. But even I got it, right? And you got it just shortly after I did. But at
Yeah.
least
Well, I hadn't
we're
been
on.
sick in like 3 years. So
Yeah. 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 And then therefore the
um
immune system is also suppressing that too. So when you get it, it can
yeah,
also be exacerbated because you haven't had to fight anything for
it
X amount of
totally,
years, right?
totally. But this is my new song with COVID. Okay.
Okay.
This is what I sing in my head. And I know technically we're not supposed to say that it's a flu, but this is my song. This is the flu that never ends. Yes, it goes on and on, my friends. Some people started getting it, not knowing what it was, and they'll continue getting it forever just because this is the flu that never ends. Yes, it goes on and on, my friends. So if you're not aware of that lamb chop sing along song that is so annoying, I'm sorry for everybody because that's going to be stuck in your head forever. But seriously, so that I just made that up and it's been stuck in my head for like since I got COVID.
Now available on Spotify and Apple Music
Totally,
or wherever you
totally,
stream your media.
totally. But don't you love that some people started getting it not knowing what it was, but they'll continue getting it forever
That
because
that
yeah.
is a great TikTok. If we ever go on TikTok and that's like one of the videos we make, that would be really viral.
Oh Lord, maybe, yeah, good point,
Yeah,
good
I
point,
know.
good point. I'll
Fuck,
just
we
have to
need to start a TikTok.
make some beats. Oh gosh,
Ugh.
TikTok. So friends out there, maybe comment. Are we too old for TikTok? I think that's stupid. That's stupid. It's no TikTok. Well, TikTok used to, I'm just answering my own question. TikTok, I think it's still a bit more younger, but
Yeah.
not really. I mean, it's like
It's like
almost
Snapchat and how I think like a lot of younger people were using Snapchat instead of Instagram because there was much more privacy and content can be deleted after it's been posted. And I
right,
think TikTok is similar to that too, but maybe a little bit less.
right. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
crazy.
yeah, yeah.
I know. I know. There was one other thing I was going to mention if I can recall it. Oh yeah. Obviously we won't have more than a few seconds to talk about it, but Rachel and I are finally going to be together in
Oh,
person, and I'm finally going
I
to visit
know.
her in Vernon. She's going to
Actually,
drive me up, folks.
and actually, that was something I was gonna mention too. So Hero, potentially, because Hero will be with me for the long weekend, the May long weekend, which is coming up in like a week and a half or so. Potentially the last night that you're here, Hero, there might be two other men staying in the house at the same time.
I
That's
don't
not
mind
my
that at
husband.
all.
Okay.
I don't
I
mind that
figured
at
that.
all.
No. So you're gonna have to watch this on YouTube, folks. Nice teeth licking. I don't know what you're doing. Oh my God, what the heck? Wow, that was dirty. That was really dirty. Okay, wow. Distraction from the okay. Stop. Oh gosh. Okay. Wow, train of thought. Okay,
So
Rachel,
what
back
about
on
them?
track. I can't look at your face now. I can't look at your face. No, okay. So Adriano, so my husband's away that weekend with friends, camp or not camping, they're gonna be in a cabin. But I didn't realize so they're back on the Monday. You're leaving on the Tuesday morning. The three, four, well, whatever, a few of them are back on the Monday, but two of them can't leave until the next morning to
Uh,
catch flights. So I didn't realize that. So I think that two of them have to stay. And I'm like, Adriana, you know what, Hiiro's here too. So anyway, we'll figure it out. I wanted to tell you ahead of time. And if otherwise, they might stay at another friend's house that have more room. So yeah, it'll be a gaggle of boys and Rachel.
I love that. They're straight, I'm assuming, right?
They are. Yeah.
There could be some fantasies there.
Yeah, there absolutely can.
Do they have a good sense of humor? Can they take a joke? Or are they quite rigid?
Yes. No, they're not rigid. No.
Okay, good.
No. We don't really have any rigid friends. Who do we have that's rigid? I mean, no.
Okay, good. Because, you know, when a gay man gets around a straight man, they love to joke around, even though they know it's all fun and games.
That's true.
They love to.
Okay, but rigid is one thing, but
Straight's
uncomfortable. Yeah, exactly. Like,
yeah.
There's some differences. Like I
there
wouldn't
are
call
some
them
differences.
rigid.
No,
I wouldn't call them rigid. One of them might be. He could be a little uncomfortable, perhaps. But I don't know. Fuck, who cares?
Oh, who the fuck cares? I got the first dibs. So sorry, queens in the town, princes in the hub.
Freaking lootly. Yeah. Love it. Oh my goodness. So, and on that note, I don't even know. We always have a funny note and transition when our guests pop on. Oh, we're almost matching. We're doing the black. We're sporting the black sweatshirts or whatever. Oh my goodness. Oh my God, and the same red lips of those years. How are you?
I know, the red lips have stayed all these
Those bangs. Oh, you haven't aged a bit, my love.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much for coming on. We are already recording and rolling, so come on into the party.
Awesome. I'm sorry I'm late.
No, it's okay.
But I'm happy to be here.
No,
you are not. You're not late. You're if 2 minutes. That's not
too bad, right?
You're a punctual person that I'm guessing normally. Otherwise, you wouldn't have said that.
Yeah, I try to be. You know, I'm big on like not wasting people's time. So
absolutely.
I try to make sure that I get here as fast as I can. And my kids are out playing with the neighbors, so hopefully they give us this whole hour before they interrupt. But yeah, I'm here.
Oh my gosh. So thank you for coming on. I know it's been a bit of a juggle trying to find the right time and date. And we did a little introduction about you, a little bit about how I met you and all the years that went back. So we'll let you introduce yourself as well. And then we can kind of fill in the blanks. Rachel talked a little bit about Showroom Etc. I talked a little bit more about the fashion BS side and from Svelte back in the day. So we would love for you to just introduce yourself and then we can go from there.
Sounds like a plan. So hi, everyone.
Hi.
My name is Elaine Mensah, and I am the founder and CEO of Showroom Etc. Showroom is a multi-brand showroom and consultancy. We are dedicated to redefining how the world experiences African luxury. And my journey to Showroom has been really interesting, to say the least. I started working in the fashion industry in 2006. I was a management consultant before then. And I always used to joke that my cube at my job was so gray, and I really wanted to live and work in color. And I always loved fashion. And my husband, now boyfriend at the time, said to me that you really should consider pursuing a career in the things that you do in your off hours, if you will. This was 2002, 2003, maybe. Around 2003, because I graduated college the year before. And at that time, E-News was big and People Magazine was like a thing.
Yep.
And I would pour over like what was happening. And it was less about the gossip and more about kind of the business of fashion and the business of the industry. And I decided that I was going to take that leap and make the lateral move from communication for federal government and in a management consulting setting and move that on to fashion. And so my fashion career started in 2006. I started my company in 2008. It was Svelte at the time, as Hiiro mentioned. And I did because fashion, I live in the Washington, D.C. area, which is not known as the fashion capital of the world. And at the time, the only way that I could do fashion in the way that I wanted to do it was if I started my own company. And so entrepreneurship for me was an accident, it kind of just was at that time. And yeah, I started Svelte in 2008. In 2016, I rebranded, and Svelte became Brand Meets Creative. Because by that point, I realized, okay, if I'm really going to do this, and now I'm married, and I had my daughter at the time, and it just was a decision. My husband was like, okay, if you're going to do this, then I need you to do this. And I realized at that point that all the passion and all the work, while it had been great, really needed a structure and a home. And while Svelte made sense to me, to the average person, they wouldn't know what that meant. And so I rebranded to Brand Meets Creative because I wanted a company name that you instantly had a sense
I was going to say
of what I do and what that means.
Yes.
And so, yeah, BMC came to be in 2016. And then and funny enough, late 2016, I got an opportunity to speak at American University, which is where I went to undergrad. And funny story, but the students who organized the panel that I was on petitioned the business school to offer a fashion program and requested that I teach it. And as fate would have it, they literally called me. This was like in November of 16. I got a call in January of 17 that said the program had been approved and they wanted to pilot it, and would I build them a curriculum? So I built Kogod's School of Business first fashion program in 2017.
Wow.
So I took a class called Fashion and Luxury Goods, and my class was awesome because I would actually take my students to Europe over spring break.
Wow.
Class. Yeah, so I did that for 2 years, for 2016 and 2017. And then, I got my timelines all mixed up because I had my son in 2018. Yeah, so this is 2016, 2017. But in the course of doing that class, I realized that I really desire to do international work. And to focus on just fashion outside of the DC area, and quite frankly, just outside of the US specifically. Yeah. And at that point, I hadn't figured out, well, what would that mean for BMC and how would that work? And late 2019, I had my son in 2018. And at that point, I kind of was like, okay, what am I doing? Does this make any sense? I suffered from a little bit of postpartum, which I didn't recognize at the time. In hindsight, kind of looking back, but it's just, I remember thinking, this feeling it's not shaking off. Like with my daughter, it was easy, but with my son, I'm like, okay, it's been 6 months. Okay, now it's been a year. Okay, it's been a year and a half. Like, something just wasn't clicking the way it did for me with my daughter. And so by 2019, I really had to relook at my whole situation and whether I was doing, how I was doing. And that's how Showroom was born. Ultimately, it came out of that period of just uncertainty and chaos in my own mind about what was next for me. And I decided to really take that leap. Honestly, it was completely God-given. Like it made no sense for me to do Showroom. It made no sense for Showroom to actually work. I launched a couple months before the pandemic. I
was thinking of the timeline, and then I was like, okay, then shit hit the fan again.
Pretty much. So in January of 20, I'm like, okay, here, we're good, we're going. I'm going to reach out to brands. I'm going to talk to them. I'm going to see how things go. And COVID hit in March. And honestly, it was the best thing that could have happened. Ironically. And a lot of times I feel bad saying that because COVID was such a hard time. Mommy's on a call. Guys, mommy's on a call. Are you gonna say hi to Miss Rachel? Yeah, say hi to Miss Rachel.
Hi. Oh my God. Hi.
Okay, go ask.
Oh, you didn't even say hi to me. Hi.
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 What's your name?
John Paul.
Hi, John Paul.
Hi, John Paul.
Is it nice outside? Is it because the weather here where we live is not that nice?
Today's a nice day.
It's a nice day.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. You're lucky.
Okay.
Sage didn't say hi to you.
Sage didn't say hi yet.
Oh no, that's okay.
That's
It's okay.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, go give this to daddy. Okay, come say hi, and then both of you. Okay,
I realize-
Come say hi and then say bye.
I
And
have
then
about a
bye.
million nieces and nephews.
Yeah.
Come on.
This is
Come say
adorable.
hi. This is the infamous Sage.
Hi, Sage. How's
Sage.
it going?
How are you? Are you upside down? Almost, not quite. Okay.
Okay, now how about
Right side
here,
up.
Go give this to dad. Take your brother with you and close my door, please. No, please. Okay, can you help mommy? Thank
love
you.
it.
Go help your brother. Please, thank you.
Real life people, real life. This is
I love
real
that.
life.
It's perfect. This is what our
That's-
podcast is about.
Exactly.
Listen,
Exactly.
I forewarned you. I was hoping we would get more
Hey.
than 11 minutes, but
But you
This
know
is
what? This
perfect.
is I feel like this is what people crave to see too.
Yeah.
Like we're so done with the,
yeah.
I don't know, the filtered everything and filtered
Mhm.
lives.
Yes. No, Joey.
Oh, Mother's Day.
Oh,
He made me a
cute.
Mother's Day.
Oh, what a
Oh my
sweetheart.
God. Love that.
Oh,
So now Sage is going to show you hers.
of course, of course. What do you, hey, actually, I have a question
Oh,
for,
wow, look at
for
those
you. Oh, I
butterflies.
love those. I have a question for you two,
Yeah.
cuties.
What?
What
Rachel
do you,
has
I have
for
a
you.
question for you. What would you say your mom does for work? What does she do?
Fashion.
Okay, awesome. Oh, good answer.
I want on the back. I want on the back.
Aw. Oh, look
Oh,
at
that
that.
is so beautiful. And then so
Aw.
fashion, and then you guys are artists.
Yes.
Yes.
Make
Okay.
it like
okay.
this, and I think she does branding as well.
I do.
It's beautiful. Now that we've engaged them, it will never end.
Exactly. Yeah. You don't give my kids a microphone and a platform. No.
It
Oh,
runs
I
in the
love
family,
it. I
like
love
mother, like
it.
children.
I love it. I love it.
Can you go, please? Seiji, take your brother and go around the
Bye.
house for me, please, so I can finish. 'Cause
Have
I
a
hear Daddy
fun-
coming into the door.
Have a fun
Daddy,
activity,
I have an
afternoon,
interview.
evening.
Mama, make a big bubble.
Okay, go make a bubble. Go make a bubble in the living room.
Oh yeah, go
Ooh,
make that
bubbles
bubble.
are fun.
Go make a
Bubbles are
bubble.
the best in the living room.
Bubbles are the fun,
Okay,
funnest,
go,
funnest.
go.
That's
Go
not even a
figure
word.
it out.
I'm
Go
sorry.
help your brother.
I'm starting to speak kid talk now. I'm saying
Oh,
funnest.
take your shoes off. No. Take your shoes off. Okay, then you have to be quiet. If you're gonna stay here, then you be quiet. Yes?
Oh,
Okay.
I love it. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Well, then okay. So now that I know they're in the room, I will not
Yes.
swear.
Yeah.
No more swear. No, I think I said one swear word. So no more swear words.
I think you'll survive.
Okay.
You'll be good. Yes, they hear it enough. My daughter's always like, "Mommy, language."
Oh.
No,
Aw.
don't show them. Jesus.
Oh
Okay,
man. Okay, one more. How about
One
one more?
more.
One
One
more.
more. And if
One
whoever's
more.
listening to this, you might have to
Watch
go
on
and
YouTube.
watch this.
Oh
Oh
my God.
Are you serious?
Look at
You
that
are
fashionista.
so cute.
Oh my God, that fashion wardrobe.
And I love the yellow. I
You just
love
made
Yes.
it. Look at the cheese. Full
I
cheese.
love it. Oh gosh.
So
Aw.
I actually truly do need to focus. Yes?
We need to talk to mommy now.
We need to talk to
Okay.
Mama.
We're so interested in your mama.
Yeah, my husband should be coming in any moment. Faith, can you go tell Daddy that I need his help? Go get Daddy in the basement. Go. Good job. Close the door.
Okay.
Close the door.
Okay, we have 5 minutes, maybe. No, I'm just kidding.
But honestly,
my
this is
God.
what this is
I
perfect.
love it.
This is
I
what we're
love it.
about.
Thanks.
So
Close my door, please. Close the door. Thank you.
Well, was that, now it's reminding me of all the things that happened in the beginning of the pandemic when people were working from home.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there were like news anchors or people with children popping through their door. Like coming through their offices, like throwing
Yes.
stuff. Like, oh my God, it was pretty funny.
That
It was
is me. I'm still there. I haven't quite made it past that hump.
oh my
I'm still
God.
there.
So,
Oh my
okay. Have you been working so do you typically work from home? Like is
Yes.
that okay? Yeah. So your
I
home
work.
your office is your home.
My
Yeah.
my
Or
office is my
wait,
home.
your home.
And my
yeah,
home
you
is
know what I
my
meant.
office.
Yeah.
Yes. I have a full setup here in the house. That was, funny enough, or should I say ironically enough, my husband and I moved in September of 19.
Okay.
We built a new home. So we were in a townhome before, and we moved to our house. And at the time, we had thought about, okay, I think we should have separate offices. It just kind of made sense. And who knew that we were going to end up spending 2 years in our house?
Right.
And, we jokingly say that the blessing in all of this was that I don't think we would have spent as much time in our home. We wouldn't have spent necessarily as much time with our friends and family. We've gotten to know our neighbors in a really intimate way that it never would have happened had the pandemic never happened. So it's like, a silver lining, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
And speaking that kind of community.
Absolutely. And just kind of bouncing back to something you said just before the kiddies came in, you said something about how the pandemic actually was useful in some way to your business and to Showroom. So can you explain that? Why is that?
Yeah. The pandemic ended up being a blessing because in many ways people had to stop. Like everybody stopped.
Yep.
And for the first time, people who may never have responded to my cold email, who may never necessarily have jumped on a Zoom, now, one, they didn't have anything to do, and two, were more open and just receptive to looking at life differently, to doing things differently, to considering something different. And I've met more people that I have deep relationships with now that I have never met in real life. And most of my brands, my clients, 95% are international, and specifically on the continent. I have never met them in real life. I talk to them 50 million times a day. I know their children. I know their schedules. They know my life. We speak intimately, but have never actually met. Wow. And that never would have happened had it not been for the pandemic. And I also say that one of the reasons I really decided to focus on African luxury specifically, aside from the fact that I am African, I'm first generation American, but I'm originally from Ghana. Yeah. And I have an affinity, obviously, to the continent, to Ghana specifically. I spent my formative years from 8 to 16 in Ghana, so I speak the language. And amazing. I've had the opportunity of meeting my family members who are there, and I have a real connection. But on the fashion side, on the industry side, sustainability is a big conversation, and how do we make sure that we're keeping the planet in mind, and just the practices that the fashion industry goes through or does that are not eco-friendly. But African fashion inherently is sustainable because we don't have the level of production and the budget, quite frankly, to do certain things. And so the skills and the traditions and the craftsmen are passed down. And so a lot of it is inherently sustainable. So dyes are natural dyes made out of flowers and plants. And
I didn't even think about that. It makes sense. Yeah.
So for them,
wow.
Yes, the pandemic, especially in the beginning of lockdown, was a little bit jarring for everybody. But once we kind of got over that initial hump of, okay, now we're done making masks, it was like, well, we can actually still work.
Yeah.
Like we are not in a situation where we're reliant on mass wholesale to purchase from us in order for our ecosystems to keep thriving. So that allowed for me and for Showroom to grow, because business on the continent and for makers on the continent was still business as usual to some extent.
Wow. That really just opened up my mind already, just talking about sustainability and eco-friendly. And it's something, I never thought about that. Thank you for sharing that.
It just gives me like the slogan, like naturally.
Right. Yeah.
Like actually, because there are many
actually,
things,
yeah,
like naturally, actually.
Yes, pretty much.
Yeah. Yeah, like
Pretty
there's no gimmick.
much.
It's like it's part of the earth, part of the land, part of the people, part of the culture. Get with it or
Yeah.
don't, right? Like
Yeah.
Yeah,
you're missing out naturally.
you are. No question about it. Yeah, it was definitely a Sage, stop. Stop. I'm on a call. Then please leave my office. Thank you. um yeah, it's definitely been an interesting time. I think globally, we maybe have not capitalized on it as much as I would like. I mean, that's really my purpose and ethos for Showroom, is to provide opportunities, to provide access for brands on the continent, but also for entities here to be able to source from the continent and to really see it as a viable option, and to know that we can deliver and produce at that same level and be able to check off some of those boxes. So yeah,
and that's something good. Yeah, and actually, and that's something that I want to bring up too, because I noticed just doing some research about representation of, you successfully getting more representation on, for example, television shows perhaps, or in fashion, with African fashion being, again, I'll use that word, represented more in media and those kinds of things. I don't know if you can speak to that. Is that something that is a goal, one of your goals also with the brand or with your company?
Yes, it is very intentional for me.
Yes.
I've always said that part of what I hope for Showroom to be able to do is to allow people to kind of break their interpretation, or their, for lack of a better term, their stereotypes or tropes about what African fashion is. And typically when people think about not even just the fashion piece, but whether it's luxury, whether it's decor, you name it, there's a very specific image that comes into mind. It's very tribal, it's very traditional, for lack of a better term, or you go and you think about the wax print, that there's just certain kind of classic imagery that is in anybody's mind when you think about African fashion, luxury, design. And I always say that to date, particularly in entertainment, African anything is seen as costume, right? So whether that's Black Panther, which as much as I loved what it advocated for, it did reinforce that kind of costumey element of what African fashion is. Coming to America, even Beyonce's Black is King, there's a very kind of costume element where the average person can see it and appreciate it, but you don't see yourself in it, right? You wouldn't necessarily look at that and say, "Ooh, I'm gonna go buy this outfit," or "I'm gonna go buy this headpiece," or "I'm gonna go," right? And for me, one of my big goals is to kind of break that stigma around African fashion, because while that aspect of it is real and does exist, it's a really small piece of what the overall continent has to offer aesthetically. And people forget that the continent is 54 countries deep, and each country has its own aesthetic. And with that aesthetic comes its own design, and with its own design comes all of these different options. And so it's really that. And so when it comes to entertainment, my mission is for us to be visible and seen in as many places and spaces as possible, because the one thing that changes narratives is culture. And the way in which culture changes narrative is music, movies, and television. And so if I want people to see, consume, think about African luxury and African fashion in a certain way, then those mediums, culture is really important, that becomes a part of what we do and how we give people access to the brands that we work with.
Yeah, that's
so
really
well said.
Yeah. And what's great though is that are a peer, and I was saying this before you came on, and you'll hear it when you listen to this when it comes out, but I was saying that you're someone similar to Rachel and I, where we're always reinventing ourselves, and we're not afraid or concerned to adapt and adjust accordingly to the needs of our society, the needs of business or economics. But honestly, what is filling us up and giving us a purpose, and in addition, providing a living ideally from that purpose that you have. So kind of taking it back to when I met you, and I didn't know your timeline when you entered fashion. So when you did do Fashion BS, and when I first connected with you and with James Cornwell, that would have been pretty early on in your fashion career.
That was maybe that was 2009. I want to say, because we started Fashion BS in 2009 and then
it was
closed
early
in 2011. Yeah. So
it was early on, and I was there for most of it, you know. And so one of my favorite memories, of course, because Rachel was wondering, like, how did you meet Elaine? I said, well, funny enough, you know, I credit you and James. Actually, one of the dynamics for Rachel and I organically of what I wanted to recreate in our podcast, because it was such a prolific moment for me to be able to be part of a conversation and with two really like-minded, candid folks who were really inspired by similar energy. So I actually missed that recording. Like, I think I have it on one of my older laptops, but I think I've lost it, you know? And so one of the favorite things that I love, and I think I said this in our offline communication, I love when I watched the episode back, and because James is so wacky, you know, I love it, like, you know, yay, hero, let's call Hero. And he's like, there's a hero inside your heart. We're gonna call your gay ass right now. And then Elaine is like, he's 7. No, he's like, he's 17. Can I say gay ass on here? And Elaine's like, I think so. It was just
those were the days.
It was
it's so interesting because Fashion BS, like looking back now, Fashion BS was so ahead of its time. I mean, we were if I'm not overstating, we literally were like the first fashion podcast, because podcasts weren't a thing in 2009.
No, they were just starting.
We spent half of our time educating people on how to subscribe. Like I saw posters the other day, I think it was like download, subscribe, listen, or something. And we would have to educate people on what a podcast was and where they could get it and how they could download it. And you know, in hindsight, we probably should have kind of just pushed through and waited for the times to catch up to us. But it was a really good time. And I look back now and I say, if only we had done it just a couple years before, or a couple years after, things might have looked really different for us on the Fashion BS side.
I think the same way with our podcast, because now it's like every freaking person, their dog, everyone has a podcast, everybody. And every time I go on Instagram, I'm like, oh, they now have a podcast. They now have a podcast. And it's not like, I think the same as you. I'm like, well, gosh, if only we'd done this like a couple years prior to and started it. But, you know, you just, timing can be everything. But I think connections are also important. And I don't know. I mean, you just never know. You just can't, you can't time those things. Really.
I mean, so many things that we've done, or should I say that I've done since then, that experience and that kind of understanding of people and of communication and have all come in handy, that had I not done it then, never would have known, right? And just the ability to go from an idea to execution when the resources don't exist, right? When the platform didn't exist. I mean, I self-taught how to edit audio. Right? Like I learned, because it wasn't a thing at the time, right? There was no Zoom, there was no this that would pre-do it for me. So I still have the microphones, I still have all the Adobe software that I bought to edit my own audio. That's a skill set that, you know, you can't take away now that I have it.
Okay, where you seem like such an amazing, like you see maybe a hole or a niche somewhere and you just go for it. Where did you learn that? Were your parents, was there any entrepreneurial spirit in your parents? Was it something like, where did you learn? Or is just something innately that you have? It's just really,
that's a great
really
question,
cool.
Actually. I actually haven't given much thought to the source of that. That's actually a really great question. I think for me, I always look at it and say, I don't want to live. Actually, I'm gonna be honest. I stole this from my pastor, who says, "Don't live." He said the richest place on earth is the cemetery, is the graveyard, because all the ideas that never got realized and all the gifts that God gave people that never manifested died with them. That is the richest place on earth. And he was like, I want to die empty. And there was something about that just resonated with me, because at the end of the day, we're all going to die. I mean, it's morbid, but it's true, right? And the idea of dying empty, that every idea, every thought, every option that's been given, a vision that God has given, that for you to be able to release that. So I've always had this, I'm not afraid, if you will, of failure. I think that's really the driving force. For me, it's like, what's the worst that can happen? If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. That's it. Like, and I would rather that than not do it and look back with regret, or look back and say, oh, I wish I had, and I could have, and I should have. For me, it's like, why not? If I've been given that vision and I can see it, like I can see it with my eyes closed, then it's meant for me to do. And if I do it and it works, great. And if it doesn't, I take that skill, that toolkit, whatever it is, and I apply it to the next thing. So
oh gosh, I love that.
How I operate.
So with that idea of life and death, the cycle of life, the stages, the evolution of how things grow and expand, kind of like a molecule. What was your life like when you were, brought into the world, and your earliest childhood memories, and kind of some of the seeds that may have been planted even before any of this came about? Kind of take us on a journey back to that part of your life.
Yeah, I had a very interesting childhood. My, as I said, I'm first generation American, so I was born here.
Right.
I'm actually a native Washingtonian. You don't meet too many of those.
Hey,
Wow.
it's like native Vancouver. It's holla.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm not, but
yeah, you don't come across many of those. And
true.
wait, hold on one second. My kids left my door open.
Sneaky.
Oh, those kids, they're sneaky. They're like, if we don't close it, it means that the door's always open for us to come in.
I was hoping to catch someone's eye and say, like, lock it, but it wasn't happening.
They'll come in and be like, objection.
So I closed and I locked the door because my husband's home. So
there you go.
I
Okay.
loved it. I love it.
Go JP. Go JP.
Right? But yeah. Oh, what was I saying? Oh, yes. So I had an interesting childhood in that I was born in DC. My parents they separated early in my childhood, like I think even before I was born, quite frankly. And so my grandparents were a key part of my growing up. And I was born, and then my grandparents came to help my mom. I actually went back to Ghana when I was 5 months old with my grandmother. I came back when I was 2. And then I left again when I was 6.
Right.
To live with my father. And I lived with my father for 2 years, from 6 to 8. My father worked at the Smithsonian for many years. And then he was at the African Development Bank. And then so we traveled a lot, but I lived with my father for 2 years. And then I landed back with my grandparents when I was 8 in Accra. So I lived with my dad in Ivory Coast, because that's where he was stationed at the time, from 6 to 8. Wow. And then I lived with my grandparents from 8 to 16 in Ghana. And then I moved back here. And I've been back ever since. And so I think a lot of how I function comes from just being able to adjust and adapt to different environments. And knowing that no matter where I land, that I ultimately have control over how I choose to see where I live and the space I'm in. And I learned at a really young age perspective that how I choose to look at my environment and my situation is ultimately going to determine my happiness, and it's going to determine how successful or non-successful I am. So that same story I just told you could be a very sad story of a little kid that was bounced around, that, never really lived with their parents, that it could be a completely other story, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
But for me, it was the best possible experience. Growing up with my grandparents, I always say, given the dysfunction of my parents, the best possible outcome was growing up with my grandparents. Right. And just because I grew up with them, I also was privy to a certain amount of wisdom. When you live with old people, you're imparted with a certain level of wisdom and knowledge, and you experience life through the lens of people who've been here before. So my perspective on things is very old.
Yeah.
That better term. And I'm very grateful for that. And I think it's well suited for my personality. And my grandparents, my grandfather in particular, was really instrumental in allowing me to develop a sense of self and didn't discount, even at that young of an age, what it meant for me as a child to have an opinion and to express that opinion and to think through logically what that means. And I'm so grateful for that, because if you know anything about African parents, you know that children have no voice. Opinion. It's, you know, you do what your parents say, and there's some validity to that for sure. But I'm grateful that I was given the opportunity to know how to think and how to think through things. And that analytical thinking was very much encouraged. And he was really big on talking me through things. And so even now as a parent, I am very big on communication with my kids. I tell them all the time, use your words. Even my son, if he's having a complete meltdown, I tell him, listen, it's okay to be upset. Like, it's okay. Like, it's okay that you're upset. It's okay that you're angry. It's okay. Whatever the emotion is, that's perfectly fine. But it is not an excuse for you not to communicate it in the proper way. So if you want to throw a tantrum, be my guest, but you have to use your words to express to me what exactly it is that you need. And it's, you know, my husband jokes sometimes that's new age parenting, but listen,
but that's what
I want to raise children that can communicate.
Yes. And you grew up, which is so interesting. You grew up with this an older generation, yet they were ahead of their time.
Yes.
So
my grandfather, very much so.
Really cool. Yeah. So, because that was my other question, but you already answered. It was going to be, okay, you know, you got all this old wisdom, but was it also old school wisdom? But it sounds like they were already kind of, you know.
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. I mean, to be honest, I have done a lot of reparenting as a parent. And so she doesn't know me, and I don't know her from a can of paint, but I adore her. I follow this lady on Instagram called Dr. Becky. I don't know if you've heard of her. Dr. Becky. Oh my God. Let me
I'll look her up though.
Everybody needs to follow Dr. Becky, because she is a child psychologist, but the level of reparenting that I have reparented myself, listening and understanding the psychology behind parenting our children through a therapist's lens, which by the way, Dr. Becky started posting because of the pandemic. And now she has a book coming out and
wow.
Yeah. But
another pandemic success story.
Another pandemic success story. But I have to say that so much of my perspective around parenting and communication and just even how I process through pain and process through depression and process through my children and their tantrums, or even my guilt around being a mother and the inadequacies that I feel and the insecurities that I have, just the ability to kind of train myself to think about it from a different perspective came from understanding that psychology. So one of the things that she had talked about early in the pandemic that really, really stuck with me, that I've applied to how I parent my children now, is she said that as people, we are conditioned to only really know how to process the emotion of happiness. And so when our children are upset, our default is, why are you crying? You should be grateful you have A. You should be happy you have B. You should, whatever the thing is. Or we say to them, wipe your tears. Smile, we rush them to be happy. Yeah. We rush them into being okay. And inevitably,
that's how I was raised. Oh yeah. Right? Yeah.
And inevitably what that does as an adult is when you come into a negative situation, or you're dealing with an anger or a frustration or whatever, you're rushing to happiness. So you turn to alcohol, or you turn to drugs, or you turn to promiscuity, or whatever your vice, food, because you're rushing into happiness.
Yeah. You're numbing and hijacking.
Yeah. Or you develop some severe mental health challenges, which is what happened to me. So I mean, it's
And it was really key because the second part of what she said is we need to allow our children to learn how to process all the other emotions the same way they process happiness.
Yep.
So if your kid is angry, let them sit in their anger, right? Because they need to know how to emotionally cope with the feeling and the discomfort of anger and process it long enough to know at the end of that rainbow, or should I say at the end of that tunnel is a rainbow.
Yeah.
Yes.
That at the end of that anger, you can calm down, you can have tools, I can go on and on and on. But I say all of that to you to say that's really, there's been a lot of that in addition to kind of that wisdom and that analytical thinking that I went through in my younger years.
Right. And I have so many questions that kind of are inspired by that, because you speak a lot of the things that Rachel and I live with, and I'm sure many people live with, therefore can relate to. But as you know, we didn't really talk a lot about myself and my mental health on the podcast in 2009, but I live with chronic anxiety and mental health. I would say gifts, because that's the nice way to spin it. And Rachel does in her own world too. So our podcast, we talk a lot about mental health, sexuality, and gender, and everything else in between. And so with that said, would you say as you got back to DC when you were 16, and then you're still basically in the middle of high school, pre-university, like what was that like to reintegrate back into North American culture and for you to kind of figure that out?
That's a good question.
Was that a different transition for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's interesting. I was fortunate that while I was gone over the course of those 8 years, I would come to see my mom over the summers. So I wasn't completely disconnected, but going to high school here, and by the way, I came back when I was 16. And so, but because of like the educational system, I came back to 12th grade, essentially. So I came back to my last year of high school, my senior year of high school. I graduated high school at 17. And I remember being, what's the word? I actually looked at the kids here and just thought to myself, how spoiled, entitled, and privileged these kids are. Because while I went to an amazing school in Ghana, I went to one of the top schools in Ghana, it still doesn't necessarily compare to what was accessible here. And I remember my high school, I don't know if you guys remember the movie, Remember the Titans with Denzel Washington.
Yeah.
That was my
it's been a while,
school.
but really?
Oh,
yes.
Wow.
And so when I came into high school, my school, at that time, computers were like a thing. And I remember just thinking to myself, like, wait a second, these kids are complaining about what exactly? Because I just left my friends and we would give anything to have the level of resources that was available to us. And so I remember coming back and being a straight A student, it was like such a thing, or like I'd have people say to me like, you speak really good English for somebody who just came from Africa. Like,
face palm. Yeah.
And it was, and it was like, bless your heart. Like I wasn't offended by it, to be honest. If anything, I looked at them with kind of like just this pity, like, oh my goodness, like you have no idea what's outside the four walls of the DMV. But I wasn't in high school long enough. So to be honest, I had no attachment. For me, it was just like, it was a means to an end. I was headed to college. I was like, oh, this is just a year. Let me get through this. I was still very connected to my friends. Now, I don't know how old you guys are, but this was just around the time that AOL. So to be able to connect
AOL
and wait for you got mail, like that was a thing.
Yes.
And that was like right around the cusp of it was actually right before like MySpace or High Five actually came before MySpace.
I don't even know what High Five is or what that was.
High Five was the first. And I remember I went to college in September of 99 and my father bought me a 4 gig e-machine, a 4 gig e-machine computer for me to have my own computer.
Wow.
My dorm. What?
That's pretty baller.
That's awesome.
For $19.99.
Yeah.
Wow.
I thought I had made it.
Yes.
Yeah, I did.
And for my 18th birthday, he got me a cell phone. And when I tell you, I was, listen, you couldn't tell me anything. I was 18 in college with a cell phone and a computer.
Yes. Slay.
You couldn't tell me anything all day long.
Exactly.
So, yeah, my experience kind of transitioning back was really interesting. And yes, I locked the door. Go talk to daddy.
I love it. Don't learn how to pick locks.
But yeah, it was interesting to say the least. And the one I would say the one negative that I in hindsight now see as a negative, I didn't see it at the time, was I never really developed roots. Especially in those years. A lot of my relationships and stuff that I've developed now that I'm older have a lot more roots than then. I think subconsciously for me, I knew I could leave at any time, right? Things could change at any time. I could move at any time. So I wasn't committed to really kind of these deep rooted relationships here. In my mind, my family, my community was still in Ghana, because 8 to 16 is like pivotal.
So formative. Yeah.
Formative. And so for me, that my friends in that time and my life at that time was still my core, and everything else was like, well, I'm just here for college. Well, I'm just kind of passing through. Well, everything is just transitional or transient. And it wasn't until probably I graduated, when I finished my master's, I think, and I realized, you know what, I'm actually not moving back to Ghana. I think I always thought to myself, I'm going to go to college, and then I'm going to go back. And I think it wasn't until that point that I realized, okay, this is home now. And if this is going to be home, then I really need to commit to it being home.
Yeah.
So yeah, a lot of my journey, really began in terms of like building roots and like acknowledging that this was home for me. Probably 03, 04. Yeah, just around the time where I realized, okay, this is what I wanted to do, and this is where I want to be. And yeah.
But was fashion, like, was that a part of your life growing up? Like, what was that pivotal moment of like just wanting to pivot completely?
So it's so interesting because even to this day, like my mom, my grandma, they can't wrap their heads around me being in fashion. I was the ultimate tomboy. Like my mother was really big on like dresses and being pretty, and she and my aunts, like, they are fashion girls. My mom went to fashion school, she went to millinery school. My aunts, they bake and they make clothes, and like they were very much into that creative space, and that was not my ministry. Like I remember as a kid, like my mom would buy me these really pretty luxury purses, and I'd say, I don't want to wear that. I didn't want to wear earrings, I didn't want to wear dresses. It was just a negative. And then I think, so I didn't do anything with fashion. I didn't go to fashion. Fashion was not even on my radar until I started work. And as I mentioned in the beginning, I realized like, this is bland. Like I didn't know what I wanted. I just knew that this wasn't it. And I knew that the joy that I get from the fashion industry is not the clothes, it's not necessarily the design, it's always been the business. I'm fascinated about what makes people tick and why we buy what we buy, and who determines the color of the year, and why is this popular, and wait a second, who decided that, skinny jeans was in, and it was always that, that really got me interested. And I love communication just as a field. So it really was like, okay, let me make that move. And even when I made the move, it wasn't specific. I was all over the place. I mean, I tell you, I've done everything under the sun.
You need to see what stuck. You just didn't like, a lot of us do that. Yeah.
And I also learned, at that time, I realized too, that I actually had the capability and the capacity to do a lot of different things. And as I've gotten older, what I realized is just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Right. Great
right?
point.
But I learned that the hard way, because there are a lot of things I can do, but does that mean I should do it is another thing. And so that came with wisdom and growth and maturity, and being able to, even now, like there's certain client work that comes in and I say, I'm not going to do it. Can I do it? Yes. But should I do it? No.
Right.
And I wouldn't have been able to make that distinction had I not been through that roller coaster at the beginning of my fashion career. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. I keep having to ask you about your shirt because you keep coming up and down. And I'm like, what does the whole thing say? Oh, okay. Okay.
It's fine. I'm fine. Everything is fine.
Okay.
Love that.
Okay. Because it's so interesting because you actually said a couple times while we were talking about like parenting, for example, you know, or how maybe I was parented, like, no, it's okay. It's okay. We know everything's fine. Just don't worry. Wipe your tears away. Yeah. So it's very fitting that you have, that you're wearing that.
Yes. My girlfriend got this sweatshirt for me and I absolutely loved it, because that's the mantra for us growing up for so long. It's like, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine. Everything is fine. Like, don't worry about it. Like when you're nervous, it's fine. Everything is fine.
Yeah.
But is it really, you know? Yeah.
Although it is like, I mean, and there's the whole thing about it's okay not to be okay. Right.
Yeah.
And that's like kind of, I guess that's turning it on its head, so to speak, but that's a whole thing too now.
Yeah. But I mean, but in terms of, you know, vulnerability, in terms of honesty, you know, and as you said, embracing your emotions, you know, our emotions have a cycle, they have a shelf life and they come and they go. But if they get stuck or they get patterned and you can't move through that pattern, that's when they become potentially dysfunctional. And they start to become behavioral patterns that become neurological patterns, which then become so hardwired that it's almost in denial. We don't know that we're doing it until we unlearn it. And so when you're talking about reparenting, reprogramming, it's the same thing when it comes to your business endeavors. So, and I can't believe we're coming up on 6 o'clock. That's crazy.
I know. Well, 6 our time. What
time
is it there?
To death.
No,
it is. It's almost 9 o'clock. It's 8.
Oh, geez, that's what I thought.
So as we start to wrap, what I wanted to ask you is kind of what's going on next for you? What do you have, you know, in the pipeline for 2022, both personally and professionally, or anything else that you want to share so we can help support you?
Oh, thank you. Well, on the personal side, my primary goal for 2022 was discipline and consistency. That was my goal. Okay. Yes. Because I realized that while you can do a lot of things, if you're not disciplined and you're not consistent, you'll take off and you'll drop just as quickly. And, you know, I keep referencing my pastor in church, but my personal spirituality is really important. It is like the anchor to everything that I do. I'm very big on discernment. I'm very big on being still. And there's a phrase that I have, you know, throughout my office, and it's called the pace of grace. And a reminder that, my pastor did a sermon on this called the pace of grace, which basically means that it was a reminder that nowhere in any of our biblical teachings did Jesus ever run. Jesus walked. And it's a song and we think about, but you know, when you actually break it down, he walked and he still achieved his purpose. And in an era of hustle and grind, and you're behind, and social telling you like, you're not doing this and you're not doing that and you're not doing that, I'm consistently reminding myself that this thing that we call life is a journey. And on this journey, you have to find your own pace, and you have to move at the pace of grace. And that pace may be fast sometimes, it may be slow sometimes, but being in tune enough to be able to recognize when it's okay to be going slow and when you need to kind of pick it up a little bit. But ultimately, Jesus walked. And so my goal for this year is to have that discipline and consistency to find my pace of grace at which I move, that allows me to balance motherhood and work and self-care and all of these things that, you know, are on my plate that are inevitable for me to do. How do I do that and stay balanced and not burn out and not, you know what I mean? So that's my big personal goal. My professional goal
Wow.
is quite frankly the same thing, but on a different spectrum. It's more of how do I grow my business and grow it, or should I say, and scale it at a pace that I can manage,
Right.
and at a pace at which I can deliver the highest possible quality to my clients, and to the community at large. And so it's knowing when to say no or not yet, even when it's really tempting, even when I need every piece of coin I can get.
Yeah.
It's being able to say, "Ooh, wow, this is a great opportunity, not yet."
Right.
Or maybe I have to pass on this for now, because if I do that, my 8, 10, 12-hour day now becomes a 14, 16, 18 hour day. I have 2 small kids. It's like, it's just not sustainable. And that's really where I am right now, is just trying to find balance with the success. And I'm super grateful that Showroom has done and is doing what it's doing. Did not expect that, particularly for a young company, only 2 years old. But yeah, Showroom's only 2 years old.
That's amazing. Yeah.
So I'm super grateful for all we've been able to achieve in such a short period of time.
Amazing. Elaine, thank you
so
so
many
much for your
nuggets of
time.
wisdom. It's unbelievable. Like, I have to sit here and just kind of relish or in all of it. So I'm kind of just, I don't really have words. I'm just trying to really just relish in all the things you just said, because I think that too often, especially these days with social media, we are too much influenced by everything else out there, and we are being hit from every direction, from everything that's not just going on, not just what's going on right in front of us, but because we have access to everything now, we see what's going on around the world.
Yes,
it's like, it's a lot. So, I think that a lot of people will be able to resonate with exactly what you said. So thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I will.
My pleasure. And it's, one last thing I'll say on that, what you mentioned, I've actually turned off news and
Good for you.
outlets over the past, I would say by the end of the Trump years, I couldn't take it anymore.
Yeah.
But what I found is that even post the Trump, I haven't been able to come back, because the weight of the world and what's happening is so heavy and so depressing. And so it was just taking a mental and emotional toll. And I believe, like, looking back now, we're not meant to know everything about everyone, everywhere, at all times, 24/7.
No.
It's too much.
Yep.
And I cannot appreciate life. I cannot smell the roses, so to speak. I cannot wake up in gratitude every day if all I hear, replay after replay after replay, is every horrible thing that is happening. So I jokingly told my friends, I said, listen, I am putting my head in the sand.
Yeah.
I'm choosing to be, I hate to say, but ignorant for the next year or two. I very much limit my news and my information, just for my own mental health, because
That's
it's
smart.
too much otherwise.
See,
I get that.
And perfect example of someone who is very successful and does that and is still successful. I think a lot of people think that if I'm not on the pulse, if I'm not a part of what is going on around me in that sense, then I won't be successful. And that's kind of what's been, I sometimes feel that way too, especially when it comes to social media. If I'm not on there all the time, every day, then I won't be successful. But
correct. And that is totally, that is a myth. Like, I got off of Instagram for 2 years.
Wow.
Like, actually, like, I did not post from 2019 till last year.
Yeah.
And what I found was that it actually allowed me to operate in a bubble, in my own bubble of creativity, in my own vision, like, not to be influenced by the outside.
Yeah.
So that was really helpful.
Is it bedtime? It must be around bedtime.
I think Daddy did something and he's like, Mommy, where are you? Joey.
We're gonna let you go. This has been such a pleasure. I'm just so happy that Hiiro introduced us all three, and this is thank you so much. So many little nuggets there. I can't wait to release this.
Thank you for
people.
Indulging my family, my kids.
Oh my God, of course. No, It's real life. And thank you for being such an influential individual and giving me a platform to speak I was 17 when now I'm 30. So like, thank you for these 13 years of
Thank
that
you for
seed
making me
planted.
feel old.
You're welcome.
He makes
You're
me feel
welcome, and
old every
wise.
day. Every day.
I know,
Won't even go there.
because she's 20. So thank you
yes.
so thank fine 21. But thank you seriously for being an inspiration in my life and a continuous one, and being willing to come onto the show. And it feels very full circle. So I really appreciate it, and I'm excited to keep in touch and to see our relationship continue to develop in this generation. So thank you so much. Yeah.
Thanks, guys. Thank you
You're
for having
welcome.
me.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Take
Have
good
a
care.
great night. Happy mothering.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye.
Juicy.